Welcome everyone to the Bugyan podcast. I'm Dhruv and the host of this podcast. In this podcast, we basically speak with information security professionals, CISOs, and skilled security engineers, understand their background, their experiences, their journey, and try to implement that into ours as well. Today, we have with us Shivendra Saxena. He is currently serving as the CISO of Emeritus. In the past, he has held senior leadership roles in cybersecurity in Apna, Dream 11, as well as been a security engineer in multiple other companies, including Shopify, Snapdeal, InfoEdge. All in all, he brings over 14 years of cybersecurity experience to the table. It's a pleasure having you here, Shivendra.
Thanks, Ruva. Thanks for the warm welcome.
So, Shivendra, why don't we get started by having a quick introduction from your side, and would love to understand your background because from what I can read and from what I have spoken with you about, seems like you always had a security engineer mindset before you went on to a more of a CISO role. And often other CISOs have more of a managerial mindset. How did you get into the space? What motivated you? And can you talk a bit about your journey leading up to the CISO role?
Definitely. So, to answer the first part of your question, when I started back in 2009, I was a developer, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where that tech mindset comes into picture, right? So, for the 6 months when I started with Infosys, they trained me on .NET technologies, ASP.NET, SQL Server, C Sharp, was the language of choice, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
started with that development mindset. And then my first project at Infosys was source code review for applications that were developed in Java and C Sharp, right? That's how my security journey started. It was not pen test, it was not bug bounty, it was source
Mm-hmm.
code reviews. Started doing that, liked it pretty much. And in fact, I had a very very senior mentor. He is right now in United States. His name is Mr. Prashant, right? He kind
Mm-hmm.
of guided me on every step, like this is what you need to do. I still remember when I started my pen test journey under him. I used to inject cross-site scripting payloads in the response, and I would say, okay, there is an XSS. And he would jokingly tell me, no, no, this is not how you find an XSS, right?
Yeah.
So I started from there, right? But as the things progressed, I started getting into pen test mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Android was up and coming operating system back in 2009. Started, doing some kind of, all those kiras within that operating system as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, After Infosys, I moved to InfoEdge, which operates a bouquet of websites, right? They have Naukri.com, Jeevan Sathi, 99 Acres, and
Mm-hmm.
they were already a listed company, but ironically, they did not have any security team back then. So I was the
Oh.
first. I used to work very closely with the then CTO of InfoEdge, and that's when I started to explore and I started to experiment with things, right? Multiple things, because I was the only guy in security. They gave me
Mm-hmm.
a carte blanche, if you will, to explore things, to go and try things out, and that was a really good learning experience for me. After that, I moved to uh, a quasi bank, right? It's called Ameriprise Financial. They are very big in the insurance space in the US, where
Mm-hmm.
I learned about the things that go in the background when you talk about pen test and security, which is GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. Why these
Mm-hmm.
things are important for any company? Why do you need them? Um, and that's how I learned to flip those bits in vendor governance process. And that's how I learned that, okay, this is also important. This is important to keep track of all these items that we have been doing in the past, right? Um, Ever since I have worked in startups, moved to Singapore also, worked for a startup called Lazada, which was
Mm-hmm.
later acquired by Alibaba, uh, gave me that international experience, and got to work with people from different backgrounds, different mindsets, right? Got amazing teammates over there who were coming straight from big four companies, who had a very methodical way of finding bugs, a step-by-step
Mm-hmm.
process, if you will. Learned a lot from them. Worked with people from Alibaba, got to know what scale means, right? And this was all happening when we were still in Singapore. Indian companies were still coming of age, right? After that, when I moved back to India, I was working for Shopify. That again gave me a perspective of how companies operate when there are big sales like Big Friday, Cyber Monday sales, right? How
Understood.
companies who are basically a platform for other companies, like Shopify is a platform, right? They give you their API so that you can open your own shop online, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got to learn about SOC compliances, right? Why people would basically ask these companies to make sure that they are taking care of their security and furnish certifications against that. Dream 11, Apna, and my current company, they happened in quick succession, of course, for multiple reasons. Some was about related to the location. But one thing I understood after working in these companies is that Indian startups had come of age. They were doing really good. They had scale, which we were still, thinking about back in 2015 and 16. Like if you talk about Dream 11, they have 5 million requests per second
Right.
during their peak during the IPL, right? So I got to experience all that while still being in India. And if you
Right.
talk about, I have many friends who are CISOs right now, right? Who started along with me. Their journey was started as I did. I've seen that modern age CISOs, they are not uh, email pushers. They are not pushing the envelope. They are not sending emails like FYI or FYA. They are
Hmm.
hand. They know things. They know things in and out, and they don't mind getting their hands dirty even now. And that is, I think, really really interesting because um, uh, this is how you basically understand the gravity of the situation if one arises, and you basically steer your team like Rohit Sharma did in the recently concluded World Cup.
Of course. No, that's very exciting to hear, Shivendra. I mean, CISOs getting their hands dirty is what everybody wanted all across, and seeing how, and again, I'm young in the space, but I'm seeing that many security engineers at that point, including many at the larger product-based companies in India, have come to the CISO role, whereas in the past that CISO role did not really exist at all. And quite exciting to hear your journey. It's quite interesting. I think for the first time, from a developer to source code review, pen testing, and GRC, then you went to a startup that was acquired, and then you went to Shopify, and of course now you served as CISOs in two very large companies. It's a very exciting career path, and we love to see it. But coming to the point of startups, Shivendra, very curious to understand that okay, startups that are at scale, right? Of course, you and I understand that at distribution, of course, there is something that cybersecurity becomes important. But at what point is it that a startup, and especially in India, since you believe in India so much, should companies start investing in cybersecurity? Because, of course, early stage companies, for them, the core focus may be getting their initial customers, maybe just getting that ISO done. Often there are companies who just have a certificate and they haven't actually done an audit in the past. What point do you think it is important for a company to think about security, to two, hire a security engineer, and to three, look about security as a core function? Right? What is your thoughts on that?
So I think the security function particularly it grows along with the trajectory of the company. And I would not want to classify it under Series A, Series B, Series C.
Hmm.
As per me, that is a cliched concept. As per me, when you are mapping it along with the growth of a particular function, but with the advent of compliances, like now we have a data privacy law in India, which will very
Of
soon,
course.
right? I think it's just a matter of time that companies would need to start looking at it from the very beginning, just like how they do in case of legal issues. For example, when you are starting your company, you will have to make sure that you check all the boxes about labor laws and legal clauses and all those items.
Hmm.
Very soon, because of data privacy, data security will become important, and companies will need to take a look at it from the very beginning. If not like when you are just two, three people set up, but let's say when you have a full-fledged setup, when you are actually serving people, serving your APIs are serving your customers, you will have to start looking at it. Not necessary, you need to have an internal team. You can still go for an external consultant-based services where you will, have some kind of a that umbrella term that I have heard so many times in various companies, VAPT, right?
Correct.
Spark everything under VAPT. When there is no security team, everything is a VAPT for them, right? Because I have worked with in some startups when there was no security at all before I joined, right?
Mhm.
So they used to call me the VAPT guy, right? And right. So yes, you can still do that, but you will have to do it from the very beginning as soon as you start serving customers, because of course the compliance gonna get stringent from now on, right?
Mhm.
Just like how it is in, for example, Europe or in the US, right? So, and again, I'm saying for basically getting somebody in security and bootstrapping the team, companies can still wait until they they get their initial funding rounds, or
Mhm.
they become a bit bigger. But overall, security wise, overall, that the scenario that they need to look at is from the compliance perspective now, more so
Mhm.
the securities perspective going forward.
Understood. So you feel that if companies initially look at it from a compliance perspective, that is often enough. But then as they scale, as they get more and more employees, deploying a core security function makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense to me as well, Shivendra. And coming to the compliance side of things, as you pointed out, India of course has the PDPD Act. I should not call it a bill anymore. It's been a bill for the longest period of time. Would love to know your thoughts on that because of course, companies like countries like USA, Europe, as a continent, have had these data privacy laws for the longest time, and then there are many companies who have really exploited Indian, consumers. There are so many of them just by taking all their data and so on. And really, in India, nobody really thinks about giving all permissions directly, right? They're like, okay, let's move on. What is your opinion on this law coming in? What are your thoughts, with regards to the government of India actually pushing this law? And what do you think about the eventual implementation of the law as well? I understand that there are some fines associated with it, but as we've seen time and again, until a law isn't implemented properly, it is just for the name. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that?
I think this is a right step in the right direction. We had data localization laws
Mhm.
since long, and we saw what they did with the advent of data center boom in India, right? Um, we have seen NetMagics and Reliance and so many companies setting up their data centers here, even AWS and GCPs, right, for the data
Mhm.
localization. It was high time that data privacy was also given its due share of respect within companies. And see, now companies will have to at least designate somebody as a DPO, for example,
Makes
right?
sense. Makes sense.
It will become a separate function. So we can see a similar trajectory that we did in case of CISO's roles. How it went on to become a real specific organization within a company, CISO's organization. I can foresee something on the similar grounds. They may designate their CISO as the DPO in the beginning, right? Just
Mhm.
like how initially anybody could have been a CISO even when they
Correct.
were in marketing. So initially, yes, it will happen, but as this particular act will become more strong, and they would see some examples because of these fines being implemented, companies will
Mhm.
take it seriously, because you can understand, like, the fines are so big that a startup will cease to exist if they
Of
were to
course,
pay, right? Big companies can still fathom it, but and of course, even if do, there will be a reputational loss, something
it'll
that
be
we
a big hit on their, overall trust, right?
trust,
And then
right?
that will really harm them.
Not everything can be a quantitative risk like we do in CISSP. It's qualitative as well, which is
Correct.
reputational, right? I think companies will then need to take a look at it again. Their legal department is going to be a very big driving force as far as this act is concerned, because a lot of suits, or a lot of all the legal disputes arising out of these things, they would be involved as well. In fact, I have seen this, a lot of big companies, they have hired lawyers, ex-lawyers, into their DPO's organization, and now they are driving a lot of it, because they are the ones who can manifest it, or who can ramify these details properly, right?
It's actually quite interesting, Shivendra. You pointed out. I have also actually seen that. This is something that is happening very recently. Bug bounty hunters are very excited about it because now there is someone who has to reply to them, right? So they are just sending all their emails to the DPO.
Yeah.
But all in all, it's quite interesting that everybody now has to have at least one person. With regards to startups, I feel yes, that could be very harmful for people. But at least they have some laws that saying that okay, if you're a startup, we will not fine you that much, or you will just be given away with a warning. So I think the government is coming up with that, and
Mhm.
that is a good kind of look. uh,
Absolutely.
Shivendra, my next question is around, generally I've seen on your LinkedIn, you're posting quite a lot about just living a simple life, valuing long-term stability, and not short-term extravagance. And that's just a mindset that I find very interesting. And generally, for CISOs, CISO is one of the most critical roles in a company because, while things are going right, it's all good, right? But when things do go wrong, the CISO is often the only person who is blamed. And we saw this recently in the US. I believe one of the CISOs was also prosecuted and arrested, right? So, what do you think should the CISO mindset be with regards to taking care of a company. Um, what are your thoughts on that?
See, I mean, it's good to correlate these two things. I had never thought about this, to be really honest. So
Okay.
I appreciate your analytical skills over there. Um, but yes, I mean, if I were to put it using that perspective, um, CISOs or any leader for that matter should not strive for immediate gains. For example, let's say if a customer, let's say you are a SaaS company and your customer expects you to furnish a latest pen test report. Now you have two options: either invest in good talent, right? Nurture them properly and make sure that you are doing it yourself and making sure that your due diligence is up to date. Or what you can do, you can hire somebody from outside just for the sake of providing this report, get it done, and that's it. Just we'll look at it next year. So that kind of mindset. So
Correct.
ensuring that whichever company or whichever organization you are serving as of now, making sure that whatever you are building, it stays there even if you are not there. For example, I'll tell you a very good example. When I was at Snapdeal,
Hmm.
we started this ISO 27001 certification for them, right?
Right.
That certification, that process continued even after I had left the organization, right?
Hmm.
That was a long-term perspective. That was not something like, okay, when I'll hire a few people and I'll do the pen test and I'll show it to the management that we found 5 XSS, 2 SQL injections, and everybody is happy,
That's it. Yeah.
right? We need to make sure that things are like people, especially people, are evangelized when it comes to security. And a long-term investment in this regard will actually give you results even when you are not there in the company, or even when the company has grown to become too big, because that will make sure that you are not you are not putting things on top of something which is already built. You are baking security within the culture, right? So long-term planning is really important. Strategic planning is very important in security. Operational, it's okay, anybody can do that, right? Operational stuff is easy to do in security. You can
Right.
do an nmap scan, you can run an SQL map and be happy with it. Or what you can do, you can ask your developers to undergo these trainings, undergo these security awareness questionnaires once in 3 months and gauge as to how they were doing, and then see if there is a downward trend in the number of SQL injections or cross-site scriptings in their code. That is something that
Understood.
personally I prefer, and that is something that we were discussing about CSSLP just now, sometime back. CSSLP is a certification which allows you to shift left, which gives you that comfort to shift left and create it in the culture and look at the long-term security posture of the company.
Understood. I think that makes a lot of sense. Shifting left is, I think, the core thing required in security. And a lot of the CISOs who watch this podcast will actually really relate, or really, be moved with what you're kind of trying to say. That baking security in a culture is their overall goal. And seeing, of course, the CISO coming in doesn't mean that all the bugs are gone, right? And the entire organization is secured. But implementing the controls and putting them in place and ensuring that they're lasting, as you're saying, is invaluable, right? If somebody else can actually come in and do that. So that's really awesome to hear. Um, Shivendra, now I want to ask you on one more thing, which is, you've worked on all kinds of companies, right? From InfoEdge to Snapdeal to Shopify. So you've seen security being done at all different kinds of companies. Of course, from a compliance perspective, there will be things that are different. But from a business point of view, how do you modify your security strategy, or what different kinds of controls do you put in play in a e-commerce application versus, say, a Dream 11, which is a gaming application, versus, say, of course, in say a fintech company, right? How do you look at doing that? How do you prioritize the controls that you have to put in place?
See, the bottom line in every company remains the same, right? The
Hmm.
bottom line is ensuring there are no breaches, or breaches are minimized. And even if
Hmm.
there is an incident, it should be salvaged as soon as possible. And I mean, data is the biggest, asset that we are trying to protect. Of course, along with the reputation and other things, but data. So I think the bottom line remains the same, absolutely.
Hmm.
But when it comes to different verticals, let's say you are talking about an e-commerce company specifically, um, we have multiple facets to it. We have a consumer side of it.
Hmm.
We have a seller side of it, like somebody who is actually posting things on the platform. And then we have logistics, right?
Correct.
So for every vertical, you need to take a different stand. For example, logistically speaking, somebody should be able to see the order details, but not in full. not in its entirety, right? They should be able to
Understood.
see only that, okay, this is the product and it has reached here. But at the same time, on the e-commerce front of it, on the consumer front, they should not be able to see anything uh,
Correct.
on that particular. So I think you need to change your tactics based on those requirements. But when it comes to platforms like Dream 11, it is mostly about ensuring that the platform is first of all it is available. Availability was
Hmm.
our biggest concern in Dream 11 because I mean, of course, they
So
are
much traffic.
of course, I told you,
Mm.
like close to 6 million requests per second, right? During the peak. And if it goes down and if the match starts, you can imagine um,
It's a big loss in
it's
revenue.
a big loss, right? It's a big revenue loss. So availability, I think that was the biggest focus for us at Dream 11. And of course, confidentiality and integrity was there, which is a common bottom line across different organizations.
Understood. No, I think what you're saying makes sense. That for a Dream 11, of course, availability is all that matters. But for a different kind of business, securing the data and the confidentiality of the data is what matters more. But at the end of the day, of course, you will be implementing all of these kind of controls.
Right.
Shivendra, also curious to understand. You as a CISO are checking, of course, say you're measuring the number of XSSs and all the total number of vulnerabilities kind of going down. Uh, all in all, how do you look at the entire cyber posture of your company as a CISO? Because of course, your goal is not that, okay, these 5 bugs should be fixed. Your goal is that the number of bugs that are coming in should be going down. How is it that you actually go about measuring that? Is there like a set of tools that you use to measure this, or is it like audits that you conduct that you rely on? How is it that you go about doing that?
It's actually a combination of a lot of things.
Okay.
Um, we have security training for
Hmm.
people. So we have moved to an extreme left as of now. Uh,
Hmm.
it starts with training, starts with design reviews. It goes on to code reviews and all. And at every step, so let's say whenever we are running a phishing campaign, we need to
Hmm.
make sure that the trend is taking a downward direction, right?
Hmm.
People, by people I mean employees, internal employees, falling prey to those emails. It should reduce that number of people, right? That is one metrics. And this is how security's ROI is measured also. The number of
Hmm.
issues getting reduced, right? There is no ROI other than this for security. Security is a cost center, not a revenue center, right?
Right.
So that is one trend. Secondly, of course, finding issues in applications. Something that I learned while working at Alibaba, Lazada, is that every developer had a kind of a metrics. Ever since they started developing a particular piece of code, uh, there would be a graph, there would be a line. It would actually show as to how many bugs were being found in his or her code at the very beginning versus how
Okay.
many are there now. I mean, they had some different items also, which I don't want to mention here, but yes, uh, there was this trend that you could actually go and check, and per developer, right? And they had a profile, just like how you have Facebook or LinkedIn profile. They had a profile
Okay.
where there is this, that how should I put it? That percentage is there, percentage of
Hmm.
bugs versus clean code, right? They were computing it, they were calculating based on the bugs that were found during the QA process, during the peer code review process, during the security, and so forth. That is one. That is again one metrics that we can leverage. It has not started here in my current company yet, but that is something which comes only when the company matures to and reaches a certain level. That is another mindset of finding. So the number
Well,
of
that's very interesting. You can actually tell me which this tool is later on, but very interesting to see. The developers would be very stressed.
yeah, they were
Yeah,
actually. I mean, it was kind of a it was kind of a hall of fame also for some of them.
makes sense, of course.
It was a swag for them.
Hmm.
Just like in case of bug bounty, you have swags, right? You have your percentage, you have how many are dupes and how many are first time
Correct.
which are accepted. So it was something like that as well, a wall of fame. But for some developers, it might have been wall of shame also.
Of course, that is there, but I think that needs to be in place
Yeah,
because really, cybersecurity is about your weakest link, right?
yeah,
And if that goes away, that then your entire organization gets compromised. Very interesting to hear. I'm hearing this for the first time, so very interesting. Shivendra, coming back to startups, of course, we understand that startups do not have the highest investment possible, right, into cybersecurity. But of course, to shift left or to start thinking about cybersecurity from day one, what do you think is the most cost optimized way to kind of at least kick off the process beyond compliance? Because of course, everybody can implement those basic controls. Do you recommend people opting for open source tools at least at a basic and then scale as they see for better?
So something that I have seen in the past in smaller organizations that I've worked with, um, some of them in fact, where development team took lead on this particular effort, the developers
Mm-hmm.
themselves, because they were coming from big companies and they have seen how security was managed. So they knew some of the tools, like you mentioned burp suit, like they
Mm-hmm.
knew it. And they knew that's this umbrella term VAPT, right? So what I saw by these developers were doing, they were actually performing their own unit tests for security. They had also engaged a third party to conduct tests, quarterly tests on their applications. That was when there was no security person in the team. Now, what
Understood.
happens with the reports of those third party audits is a separate thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they paid attention to it, sometimes they did not. But yes, they were at least they knew that something was amiss and that they had to take lead on that. I had also seen in one of the companies that they had partnered with a bug bounty platform
Mm-hmm.
and instead of a third party testing company, and that platform was helping them in basically filling up this gap which they had with.
What is your opinion on that, Shivendra, replacing VAPT with bug bounty?
I
Because
mean, yeah,
I'm starting to ask, like a lot of people do ask me, right? Can I replace it? What is your opinion on it?
I think when the company is small, when the company has just started and they still want to invest in security,
Mm-hmm.
it will be a good idea. But as the complexity increases, as the number of lines of code increases, it will definitely be a good point of investing in somebody, at least one or two people within the company as well, who look at security full time. Because as I mentioned, even if you have a bug bounty platform at your service, what happens with those reports? Is there somebody who is pushing for fixing those bugs? I mean, there
Mm-hmm.
is no point of finding the same XSS every 4 months and then it comes back and then it comes back again, right?
Of course, of
And
course.
same thing happens in case of third-party pen testing reports as well, right? Unless there is somebody to push the envelope from inside, or the developers are super motivated to do it themselves, I don't think it will be a wise decision. And of course, um, if your floodgates are open and you put it in front of people, right, you can only imagine what's going to happen with your infrastructure
Of
if a
course.
lot of people start scanning you, or if a lot of people start exploiting you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can only imagine. So there should be a minimum threshold after which you start looking at bug bounty. Third party pen tests are still okay because you have an NDA signed with those people, but bug bounty is, I mean, you are opening yourself to the world even before fortifying, right?
No, bug bounty is extremely effective, but of course, there needs to be a level of security maturity, if I can say,
Correct,
right, within
correct.
that organization to kind of take it
Otherwise, you
out.
will end up otherwise you will end up paying a lot of money.
Correct.
And
You'll pay a lot of bounties simply, right? Which
yes,
often comes out to be a lot more expensive.
correct.
That's like a lot of companies, in fact, even on BugBase, they prefer doing a private program before going to a public program, just
Mhm,
because they want to limit that researcher or that traffic coming into a lower amount.
absolutely.
But that is just how it is. So, Shivendra, now I would like to talk about certifications, right? And that's always like a big question in the infosec industry. And you've worked at some of the top organizations to have a security role in, right? Like the work that you've done, people dream of it. What do you think is important right now if today somebody had to kick off in cybersecurity? Of course, I understand that, in the past, there was nothing as much, right? It was really about all hands on. But nowadays, you have things like certifications, you have things like OSCP, CEH, you have things like try hack me, hack the box, you have things like bug bounty, and trying to do VDPs, and you have things like just growing your network and just talking to people and just being interested in security. What do you think is valuable for a security engineer to do today? In fact, let me rephrase the question. If you were to hire someone today, what would you look for in them with regards to their knowledge in cybersecurity, or before hiring them?
Mhm. I mean, so I'll divide this question in two parts: certifications and actual. The second part is what do
Hands-on
I
knowledge.
hands-on knowledge, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Certifications were important. I think if I talk about uh, a scenario where when we were hiring, let's say 5 years or 10 years back, certifications were important because there were not many people in security back then, and there were
Hmm.
not many avenues for people to showcase their capabilities. Other than either doing bug bounties. Bug bounties were famous. I mean, bug bounties were really famous, but the kind of swag, the kind of attention which people started getting after 2014, 2015. It was not there back in 2009, 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of living behind the curtains, bug bounty hunters, and there would not be any platform to basically showcase it in the first place, right?
Correct.
So certifications were important 5, 6 years before 2015, in fact, 2015, 2016, because that was the only avenue to showcase that you were serious about your um, you know your profession. So nowadays, a lot of people can display this swag on their LinkedIn profile, on their resumes, that they have found so many CVs. They can say that on their resume that they have completed these many machines on TryAcme. This is their level,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when you basically go and check, see, let's say, for example, if somebody has put it in his or her resume that they have found the CV, you go and check. Yes, it is in his or her name, right? That is something uh, that I give priority right now.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I have so many certifications under my belt, but I think if I were to hire someone, I would look at the hands-on experience. And now there are so many opportunities. There are so many interns who are basically working in my company. Also, we have a few interns who are working, and they are doing super, super good job. And I know for sure that if I were to convert this guy to a full-time employee, uh, he's going to do a good job, right? I don't have to wait until he gets a CISSP or CSSLP or and
Mm-hmm.
then I say, okay, now you are eligible. And we are not a consulting company. In some of the
Correct.
consulting companies, it is still
It is
mandatory.
a requirement. Yes, it is a
It is a
requirement.
requirement.
Yeah.
Correct. But for product companies, for end user companies, I don't think many people basically give more advantage to certifications versus hands-on experience right now.
Understood. No, I think that's very interesting and true as well because the first security engineer that I hired in BugBase as well, right? They worked in as a intern, a very minimal salary for a period of 6 months, right? And then they were just graduating out of college and they were looking for a job. I'm like, why are you looking elsewhere? Come here. And I gave them a good job offer, and they just came. Like whatever they asked for, I'm like, okay, take it.
Absolutely.
So on that end, I'm still seeing that all the young people, they're still the best ones in security. Like they have that fire in them, they have that ability to learn very fast in them. And if they show that hands-on experience to an employer, certifications you can really just forget about. It's the person that really matters.
Correct.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
So Shivendra, last couple of questions. One interesting thing that has happened after COVID is the shift to remote work, right?
Mhm.
And that is something that has really, changed the way cyber companies look at cybersecurity nowadays, right? To a great extent. Because of course, we discussed weakest link is the employees, and now they're not even in the office; they're connected on different networks across the world. So, what do you think is, the best way to kind of tackle this? How do you tackle this at your current company? How have you looked at this in the past? And what do you recommend? Like, just do the VPN strategy that all these consulting companies do, or what else do you
One good thing, I mean, something that is really interesting is that after COVID, most of my companies that I've worked with have been permanently remote. Even
say? Okay,
currently, it's a permanently remote company, right? So Shopify was remote, for example, right? Um, so I think I'm in a very good position to answer this particular question at least,
right.
because things like zero trust, things like boundaryless connections, and all these things have started gaining traction, especially
Right.
after companies move to permanently remote or hybrid culture. Because now we do not necessarily think about a perimeter, kind of a VPN or office network, wherein
Hmm.
you are able to access applications. Now we have device-based authentication. Now we
Right.
have authentication, which is like, there are a few companies like Netflix which allow you to use
Yeah.
any device for that matter, right? How do they do, or how does Shopify do it, right? They do it because things like UB keys, things like certificate-based authentications for your device, they come into
Hmm.
the picture. You don't have to basically ask employees to key in that, Cisco RSA ID or whatever was there initially.
Right.
You employees, they have devices. Those devices are mapped to their employee IDs. Those devices authenticate every time they need to access something. That's it. That's the end game.
Hmm.
I've seen, I mean, when I was at Shopify, Google was showcasing something known as Beyond Core. I
Right.
remember it's a really interesting thing where Chrome browser was acting as a broker between your
I've also actually seen this. There's this company called Island. It's a startup in the US. They've built a browser level. They built a layer on top of Chromium, and that
yeah,
on its own is acting as the broker to route all the information through the company's infrastructure. So very interesting, this concept.
Very, absolutely. And it acts as a DLP as well. If as
Yeah,
long as
correct.
so it has DLP capabilities, it has kind of capabilities which can implement zero trust for that matter, unless you have other browsers in your laptop, which you can basically restrict at the device level using policies. You are good to go, right?
Got
So
it.
I think I've seen a lot of these paradigm shifts, especially, and having worked for remote companies for three,
Mhm.
4 years now, I have seen it happening at a very large scale, right? Shopify was a global it is a global company. They have employees
Mhm.
from all parts of the world, and nobody comes to the office. Nobody,
Mhm.
everybody works from wherever they are. And that's even then they are managing this kind of access control nicely. It speaks a lot about this particular model, right?
No, of course, of course. I think your opinion is over here matters the most. You're a remote CISO in a remote organization. Pretty amazing. My final question, Shivendra, and we'll keep it crisp, is around AI, right? And we've seen ChatGPT and stuff come in. Uh, right now, mostly, of course, for good reasons, there are many vendors that have kind of used AI, machine learning per se, in their products, in network security or whatnot. But we're starting to see unethical actors, right, as well, starting to use these AI technologies in a malicious way. And of course, whatever knowledge that an OSCP, OSCP gives you, or any kind of hands-on knowledge, anything gives you, really nobody can stand in front of a attack that's entirely automated by with an AI agent running in the background, right? So, what do you think about the future of cybersecurity with these AI-based threats coming in play? And what do you think CISOs can do about it?
I think it goes both ways.
Hmm.
It it augments to our capability in detections. Last month, I was talking to Google about one of
Hmm.
their SIM solution, right? And in that solution, they have actually included Bard.
Hmm.
Uh, so in
Well,
the
security copilot, yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
now you can imagine Bard assisting you in analyzing or in basically correlating events, correlating threats,
Hmm.
and telling you for sure that, okay, I mean, it's still in learning phase, but maybe 1 year down the line or 2 years down the line, it will be able to tell you for sure that it is an incident. Somebody
Hmm.
was sending these things in broken down packets. But yes, when you correlate everything, it is an attack, right? So it can help you with that. It can basically do some kind of business logic testing also,
Hmm.
for that matter.
Makes sense.
But at the same time, like you have mentioned, it is also a threat because now, along with the positive side, there will be a negative side to it, which is like how they can bypass these smaller controls, how they can bypass somebody's, let's say, for example, there is an IDS which detects
Mhm.
something and it is configured in one particular way. AI will learn it and then will start sending the payloads in such a way that
That it doesn't understand that.
it evades it, unless
Correct.
that is also trained at the same level, right?
Of course.
That is one. And then, of course, we have seen these, fake videos and, deep fakes and all, which are there. And I am talking about social engineering now. Forget
Hmm.
about everything. Now, people are the weakest link. Imagine you get a video call from
Yeah.
your CEO with their face, with their voice, and they say, now it is me. There is no one else. There
Mhm.
is no social engineering, right? But I want you to click here and do this for me. And an employee will do it. Otherwise, what are they going to do? Right?
No, of course, Shivendra, I think it speaks to the overall thing that, right, in the past, we used to identify phishing emails by looking at how grammatically incorrect they are,
Yes.
right, or looking at the
Those
quality
days are
of them.
gone now.
Now you have ChatGPT, which will give you an entire email, right,
Correct.
written in the most fluent English possible from, you could even in the format of how someone else talks. Evading that and ensuring that, employees don't fall for that is the next level of security testing that, of course, people have to kind of undergo through.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah.
And I don't think people would be able to judge it
Mhm.
going forward as they become more sophisticated, the AI attacks. Only an AI would be able to basically find it.
Correct.
People would
Correct.
be limited by their, I mean, one person or two people, they would be limited. That's why that's an AI, that's how they get trained, so.
No, yeah, for sure. I think it's up to the vendors really now to really put that R&D in training these AIs against the malicious, actors that are coming in. And one, more recent thing that I'm seeing right now is that, of course, among the bad actors, there is always collaboration But among the CISOs, I hope to see more collaboration coming in, right? That,
Yeah.
okay, I have implemented this, you should also implement that. But I feel that that would add a lot of value to the overall ecosystem, and really improve it. But thank you so much, Shivendra. We'll wrap it up here. It was a pleasure talking to you. We'll keep it short and crisp, interesting for everyone to see. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I hope all the security engineers watching, bounty hunters watching, as well as the security leaders watching enjoyed this. And thank you so much.
It was a pleasure talking to you, Dhruva. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.